let's let's touch on your podcast. So it's called the Family Podcast, and like you said, you chose that name because it is evidently a family affair.
Mm.
You both kind of identified your strengths and built this podcast that you've got.
Mm.
But what was the inspiration? Why did you wanna? Why did you wanna? First off, how long has it been in existence for? How long?
A year?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, a year. And so basically what happened is, obviously, as you can probably tell, me and Don spent a lot of time together under our mother's house. And then when we left our mother's house, we lived together again in a flat.
Right.
And then I got married and found out that we were having a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to move from that flat, and we moved to Bromley.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was kind of like, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like going from seeing somebody every day, literally every day, apart from the 3 years that I went to university and the 3 years that Don went to university, we've been together all the time. You know, there's always like, you're going to walk in the house and see Don. And then it's like, raw, you don't see Don, you know, and then you have to phone Don, you know. It's like, this is weird, man. And then we were having long conversations. When I'm talking long, me and Don were on the phone for like 4 or 5 hours,
Right.
you know, just talking, catching up, like, raw. And then I was like, why don't we make this a podcast? Why don't we just say, like, this Saturday is a dedicated day where we're going to spend time together and we're just going to catch up and talk shit, you know, shoot shot and just do it, like, you know. And so he was like, you know what, you're my bro, I'm down, like. So that's how it started. And then we just, by talking, you sort of develop a philosophy, like what you want out of life, what your kind of aspirations are. And then so after that, we started to look for some guests and all the rest of it, and it's blossomed into what it is now. But originally, it was like two brothers just trying to stay in contact with each other.
Amazing. Big
Yeah.
stuff. Big stuff. And I think like most things, that kind of, what's the word? The authentic and almost, I'm gonna say innocent, but you know what I mean. You know,
Yeah.
like those innocent beginnings,
Mm.
kind of, and like I said, yeah, the authenticity of it, just making that happen. I feel like it's grown into an amazing thing, man. The few episodes I've seen, because like I say, I haven't, I didn't say, but yeah, I haven't seen that many full episodes.
Mm.
But from what I have seen, like it's a great dynamic, and what I really do appreciate and enjoy is, and it's even kind of got me. I can't remember which one I saw. Either last, was it? I don't know. It can't have been more than 2 weeks ago. But I don't know whether it was an old one or it was a more up to date one. But on your Instagram, I saw you just speaking to the camera. Maybe it was a 1 minute clip or whatever. It's your perspective. So you do that quite a bit, and it definitely had me thinking that's something that I need to do. Something that I need to
Oh,
do.
man.
It definitely makes me as a viewer anyway. What's the word? Kind of invest in your platform even more.
Mm.
I remember there was a period where he was doing a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff talking about, like when it was beard time and,
Yeah.
like getting all those things there. And I was seeing a lot of that sort of stuff. And like, yeah, it made me think, let me holler at, I can't remember which one it was, but I hollered at a company, got some beard oil and whatever,
Mm.
during the lockdown. But I think what I resonate more with is kind of the opinion-based stuff, the
Right.
perspective-based stuff, the stuff where I don't have to kind of decipher who you are as a person. I'm
Right.
kind of seeing it there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause, your personality comes out when you're maybe talking about the beard or you're talking about this, that, and the
Yeah.
other. But you see when it's actually something, maybe something's happened or something's happened in your own life and you're speaking about, or you've got an axe to grind or you're on your soapbox, whatever it is. I feel like
Yeah.
you can actually get into who the person is. And I know for me, as somebody who my friends characterize as somebody who just loves chatting, that's like my brother. My brother always tells me, like, "Wow, you just love chat." I'll go to a debate show. I'll go to that and I'll be that person putting my hand up and someone asks what I think about that, and I'll tell them. And as somebody who I can sit through a 3-hour podcast and sit through it and watch it and listen to it. So when I'm speaking from my perspective when I'm saying what makes me buy into a platform.
Yeah.
That's something that I've seen from you all, not only the visuals and the photography, but also the freeness at being able to share your unadulterated truth, you know? And that's how it comes across, because who knows, you might censor a bit or whatever, but it comes across as very authentic. And did you ever have any apprehension, either of you, did you ever have any apprehension about, because it's come from this I want to say private place, but like you just wanted a forum for you two to connect. Did you ever have any apprehension about sharing that with the world? Or did the fact that you have to share it with the world change how you presented it?
So for me, I was kind of nervous a little bit because, you have the whole cancel culture, and it's like, well, if you say something out of pocket, not only do you run the risk of being targeted by a group of people who are very loud and very active on social media, but also that could spill into your personal life where people are trying to get you fired from your job. However, I have looked at like authoritarian governments and how they operate. And one of the things that they love to do is restrict a person's ability to be honest about what they are, what they represent, and say that there are some kind of negative consequence for you being honest about what it is you believe in. And I simply refuse to do that, because that's how you get to tyranny. Because once one person makes a sacrifice to not be honest, well, then dishonesty reigns on high. And I was saying this on the podcast, like, Rod, I realized when I was reading with my daughter that that's the story behind Chicken Licking, the children's book. That misinformation leads you into the hands of tyranny, because now nobody knows what's up and what's down. Nobody's being honest. And so they just run into danger, and they don't even realize that they're running into danger because nobody knows where's up and where's down. And so this little chicken thinks that the sky's falling. That's what moral panic, and tells all of these people, none of whom like decide to fact check or offer a different perspective. And because they all think that they're doomed, some suave little fox comes along and is like, oh, I know how to manipulate this fear into their demise. And so that's what you get. And I was like, well, I'm not willing to do that. As long as I have a breath, and as long as I can be honest, I'm going to be as honest as I can be on the platform that I've been given. And people seem to be responding quite well to that. And so long may it continue.
What about you, Don? Is that the same for you, or are you just a bit more? Were you a bit more free with it anyway, or?
So it's really weird because I understood the nature of me being somewhat censored, especially because my job is very much in the public eye.
Okay.
But I'm not a censored person. So I ended up with this kind of conflict where it was like, I definitely want to share it with the world. And for it to be authentic, I need to be my utmost self. But my utmost self could get me fired. And especially like a lot of my experiences, the stuff that I've gone through. I mean, there's some things that I have shared, with my employers to some degree, in terms of my diverse upbringing and the people that I've met along the way, and, the skills that I've got because of meeting those people on the way, which unfortunately I can't divulge so much, which I plan to when I'm rich and famous and have all this money, start to let people know. Yeah. Then we can have the proper talk, But I mean, at the same time, I came to this place where I was like, all right, in order for you to be your utmost self, you have to be this person. This is just who you are. So just be who you are, but without too much stupidity that one day you're kind of sat in a room and you're like, oh, did I say that?
Mhm.
You know, and so people are playing tapes back of yourself, you know.
Yeah.
I think that generally a lot of stuff can kind of be excused. I mean, let's just think about it. Many musicians, you know, end up with a prison sentence and get a lighter prison sentence because, you know, they're doing something useful for society. And
Mhm.
so I think that in that respect and in the same light, I'm educated enough to argue my corner around freedom of speech,
Mhm.
as long as it doesn't put, you know, my profession at jeopardy, you know.
Yeah.
And I see my, you know, our podcasters teaching people life lessons. And so the stuff that I disclose is never um it's never private information, number one, about my job and my counsel. But if I was going to disclose anything, it would be about the way that people interact. And generally, I'd put myself at the forefront of that interaction. So, you know,
Mhm.
it'd be like, oh, I was at work today and I felt like this, you know,
Mhm.
rather than, you know, this is the person. You see this person from my work with the name and everything. That person annoyed
Mhm.
me today and I wanted to punch them up so much, which, you know, would then be used in a totally different light. So
Mhm.
um I've always been a chess player, you know, in the way that I think, you know, I'm very strategic. And so I always think to myself, well, all right, these are the possibilities of what could happen. This is how likely it is that it could happen. However, in the event that this thing happens, this is the way that I would try and play it out. Now, if it didn't work that way, then, you know, you end up losing your job. And such is life, you know, like, not that I ever wished for myself to lose my job, but people have lost their job and come out on the other side. You know, people have done well in life without education. Like, people, there's so many examples of
Mhm.
people excelling. And I'm so motivated in the way that I think, you know, to coming back to the family, to get my family to a place where, you know, they have a degree of financial freedom, because I don't think you can never be financially free, but, you know, they have a degree of financial freedom
Interesting.
and they have a better life, that if that cost me my job, I would just try harder to do things on a private basis where I could basically, in essence, get to a point where I was like, okay, yeah, I did this and now I'm here. And also, I think, you know, luckily for myself, my job is kind of testament to the person who I am, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and so many people would have different skewed views depending on who the people were. But I would like to think that the general population would be like, nah, that was unfair for what he did disclose, and kind of come to my aid in that sense. And even if it didn't resolve the situation, I would still be on a decent pedestal to do whatever I needed to do to
Yeah.
impact the world, you know, and give them the message that I wanted to give them. So, you know, that's kind of how I ended up playing it off. I was like, you know, this is important and necessary, you know, and when something is important and necessary, you may have to make a sacrifice for it, you know. So, for example, you go to uni, education is necessary. When you go into a secondary level of education, you
Mhm.
don't necessarily have to be there. You know, you don't have to attend. But why do people attend? Well, because it's necessary. It takes up an extreme amount of your time. 3 years of your life is no joke. Some people do 5-year courses. You know, 5 years of a life is no joke at all. If I go into work and I put in 5 years in a hard graft, I'm pretty much an expert. You know, if you do the work. And so, but the ideology of it is that you sacrifice so that on the other end that you come out better. And like, that's how I saw the podcast. I saw it as a sacrifice for us to come out better on the other end. And not just that, like, I was, it comes back to the family thing. I was like, so if you really end this because you can't give your full view, then that doesn't support my brother's dream at all. Because to be honest, if I'm being honest from the jump, like, the podcast was Sammy's dream. Like, we did do it as kind of us kind of speaking, but the nuts and bolts of the podcast is held together by a lot of the stuff that Sammy does. Like, you know, if you take out the pictures and the photography and all the rest of it, you're gonna be out of pocket, but you can hire someone. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't hire someone. Well, I can hire someone to schedule the podcast, but the kind of nuts and the bolts and me and Sam being who we are, it doesn't work if Sammy's not in the equation, you know. And so I just felt like, as a team player and as a family member, and the pact that we agreed to to get our family to work as hard as we can to get our family to where we could possibly get them by the end of our life. I was like, yeah, that's a worthy cause. And if I have to fight that cause and lose my job, then I have to fight that cause and lose my job. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, that's interesting because I kind of, through the little that I do know, I kind of had a feeling the kind of essence of what you said was gonna kind of be what you said.
Mm.
I kind of sensed that.
Yeah.
And it's as I said. I think either I said it earlier or I said it in my head. But the dynamic between you two and the way you kind of work in harmony with each other in that regard is a great thing to see. And it's interesting to me when you did say kind of where the inception was, because I did have the inception of this podcast that you see here is weird. It's funny because I tried to almost create what you lot have created to start with. The first inception was that me wanting to kind of, me and friends that I call my brothers, kind of lives going, me getting married, them having children, and wanting to kind of create a space where we commit to meeting up and having the conversations that we had more often at an earlier time in our life and creating that platform. So that makes so much sense to me, and it's an amazing thing to see. What ended up happening was life for other people. It just means that, kind of similar to what you said, where like it is your brother's baby almost, like your brother's idea, let's say. And what you've done is you brought into that idea and been able to elevate it and bring it to a certain point as a unit. What happened with my inception was that life happened and me kind of similar to you being a little bit of a hothead, cussing and screaming and telling man you're an idiot for like whatever, not understanding, you understand? And because of the stage of life I was at, not understanding that, life does happen and just being like, cool, forget it, whatever. When you're not ready, kind of that energy, where when you're not ready to do what you said you was going to do, holler at me. And then it was just me sitting down thinking, all right, cool. Understanding that I'm a little bit of a control freak and understanding the only way that, in my mind, the only way I was going to get to do what was necessary was to create a platform that I could be in control of. And irrespective of what other people do, I can still make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's where this came from, where it was like, all right, cool. Let me just, I don't want to hear myself talking for an hour or two, but if I get other people, I can have a conversation with different people. And then that's just kind of how it snowballed into the platform that you see. So yeah, I really do think that the way what you've done is an amazing thing, and it's a niche definitely that's needed, and it's important to see, without getting super political and making everything about race and gender and that kind of stuff. I think it's a beautiful thing to see not only two brothers, two black brothers, and to speak about things in a completely authentic and fearless way in so many ways, because I think that's something that is almost, don't want to say hidden, because it's like it's one of those things that you can't prove, but I think it's something that's definitely not represented enough, that me as a black man knows. When I talk to my people, whether it's my brothers, whether it's my friends, whoever, this is how we communicate.
Yeah.
We speak authentically, and we are vulnerable in a lot of ways, and so many of those things that are never attributed to us are accurate and are prevalent within our communication, but it's just never presented to the world. And if it is presented, it's just not promoted to the world, let's say. So when I came across your platform, it was an amazing thing to see, and I salute and commend you both for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
I've got a couple of what I call quickfire questions, right?
Okay.
But don't feel like they don't have to be one word answers, whatever. But yeah, I'm just interested to see what what you would say to these questions.
Okay. Are they gonna get me in trouble?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Like
Okay.
I
like your
like the
brother said,
disclaimer.
like your brother said, neither of you are stupid. So
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I hear
All right,
that. I hear that.
all right. So first and foremost, let's start with what is love.
Mad thing.
You start with
I'm
that, Mr.
talking.
Married
I'm
Man.
talking. Huh? I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask the married man first. Give you a bit of give you a bit of time to think. And I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the universal word. I'm talking
Mm,
about romantic love. So, i.e., you and your missus. That
okay. I've spoken about this before, a little bit. So that gives me some kind of backbone.
you got lucky.
But yeah, and the way that I'm gonna start off is gonna sound weird, but I'll explain.
Mm-hmm.
To me, love works a lot like a syndrome, right? Because a syndrome is not really like a medical diagnosis. It's like a group of things that come together that represent a specific condition, right? So, for example, somebody who has Down syndrome has specific things that need to exist in order for that person to be considered a Down syndrome child.
Right.
And so, similarly, with love, I think most people have this really a simplistic viewpoint of it where it's like, this is the person that I care and get warm feelings about, and somebody that I want to have sex with, essentially, right? When it's way more than that. There's no love without trust and sacrifice. There's no like because and there's no love without honor. So one of the things that me and my wife quickly established is that we don't insult each other. Like, I never call her a bitch. I never call her anything like that. And, you know, I've been with her for almost 12 years and that's never happened. Right? We made that a thing. I honor her and she honors me. And we never tell our business, you know, out in public. And we don't need to do 10,000 Instagram posts, you know, because we live together in our house and we know what goes on. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a condition for our love. And so, again, I have a physical attraction to her, you know, as well. And so for me, love is all of these things. And that's why it's so difficult for people to define it, and why the Western English definition is deficient in its explanation. The Greeks had a much better, because they had eros love and they had agape love and all of those things. And it was like different bits of love, which ties into what I'm saying. And so for me, I think it's a group of both emotions, feelings, and commitments that you make together that represent love.
Interesting. Good,
Mm,
good definition.
thank you.
Come on and done. What are you saying?
All right, so I'm gonna try and do this in an analogy because I find my analogies come off better than my actual explanations. So me and Sam grew up watching a lot of kind of Greek and Roman like movies and things like that. Especially because Sammy's like a big fan of Greek mythology, and in turn I became a massive fan of Greek mythology. And what you noticed is that when Greeks and Romans went to war, there was kind of this undying commitment to their squad, to their team. You know, you were seen as a failure only if you left the camp. You know, because of you, somebody else died because you made a poor choice. And that's much how I see marriage. And love. Just in general, because I think the two coexist. Together,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite an old school thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that when you have this kind of love for a person, it's not actually, as Sammy said, that warm fuzzy feeling like Sammy was saying. It's a commitment to die side by side with the morals that you have been instilled with, both of you, that you've kind of grown together. And it's the understanding that there will be no plan that you both don't know about. Because when you think about kind of going to war, if half of us know the plan and half of us don't know the plan, then people are dying. You know, it's the understanding that if even if you die before I die, I will feel a great pain and loss because we were such partners. So we do everything together to survive, you know. And so for me, that's kind of how I see love. I see it as kind of the traditional sense of Roman and Greek war. And I think that as you elevate through love, you almost get kind of like a godlike status, you know, because it becomes very hard for people to kind of break that bond, that unity that you have with another person. And so yeah, man, I just think that it's a commitment and it's a journey, and it's hard, you know, it's tough, just like war, you know. People gonna come and test you. You may get like one person who's speaking into the ear of another person, you know. You need to fend that off, you know. Yes, I'm gonna see people that, you know, I think, you know, when you go and raid a town, you know, for example, you may see another beautiful woman. Well, if you go with that beautiful woman, you essentially leave your camp, you leave the plan, and now everybody else is vulnerable, you know. And so because of that, you don't do that, because of what's been instilled in you, and also how much it hurts each other. And so I think that love is just that journey, like that welfare, that, you know, no matter what, my code is to stick to you and your code is to stick to me. So yeah.
Deep. Very, very deep indeed. What is forgiveness?
I ain't mastered that one. No, joking. So yeah, I mean, I'll start this one because you know I unfairly pushed it onto Sam the other time. But I think forgiveness is it's an understanding. It's an understanding that you may not see eye to eye, but whatever was done is more, is not as relevant as the future. So the reason why I say that is because with forgiveness, I don't actually have to like you. You know, you don't have to play a role in my life. You don't have to do anything. I just forgive you. It's like me letting go of the burden of a grudge, you know. And I think it's just that understanding. So, you know, I've got people that I have forgiven, but you still can't be a part of my life. Why? Because although I've forgiven you and I don't hold any malice towards you, you in my life is turbulent for my future, you know. So I think it's just the understanding that sometimes you have to let go of something and allowing yourself to almost breathe. So yeah.
All right, Sammy, what are you saying about that one?
So for me, and I might rub people the wrong way by saying this, but for me, forgiveness is absolute absolvement. So to me, the idea of forgive and forget is dumb, like, because you haven't forgiven that person. You know, when you forgive somebody, you're like, I absolve you of all, like, you know, when you look at the story of like Moses and Pharaoh, and Moses ends up killing one of the guys, and Pharaoh says, I will make it so it has never been written. And if I say it hasn't been written, then it hasn't been written. That's kind of how forgiveness works. And I don't think that you should forgive everyone. You know, there's this narrative going on. And this is why I think like some definitions are inadequate, because it's like, well, yeah, I can forgive you, but I can't forget. Like, it's like, just don't forgive the person. Like, you know, I think we've got a fear of being bad people, you know, because bad people don't forgive. You know, it's like, but some people, like, they should never be forgiven, you know, like, and I'm perfectly justified in saying that you shouldn't be forgiven for doing that, for betraying me in this way, or for whatever it is. And so I think that if you are going to forgive somebody, you should be able to forgive them and have them round for dinner the next day. That's complete absolvement. And if you're not ready to do that, don't say that you forgive them, because you actually haven't. So forgiveness to me is absolute absolvement of what's been done. You wipe the slate clean, and, you know, you move forward with that person in your life.
Based on Sammy's definition, I ain't forgiving no one.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you know what is funny? Yeah, because
if not,
I agree. I agree with your definitions. I agree completely. Sorry, maybe your screen froze. I'm not sure, but you wasn't finished?
No. So yeah, that's it for me. That's all I have.
All right, cool. No, I was saying, because this is the debate I've had before, where the debate, my definition is pretty similar to yours, Sammy, and my friend's definition is pretty similar to yours, Don, right? And the debate I was having was that I believe your definition, Don, is what I would call acceptance. So you've accepted that this person is who they are, they've done what they've done, and you can't change it, and wanting to change it is not of any benefit to you as a person. It's not productive to your life. It's not constructive to what you're trying to build. So,
I mean, my situation is not even constructive to their life, but you know.
Yeah, I hear you. So, but you've accepted that, and you said, all right, they've got no place in my life. Because either to protect myself from their either malicious intent or just from their inability to be constructive or productive, right?
Yeah.
And which is fair, and I agree, but I would call that acceptance. For me, forgiveness, kind of like your brother said, is very much like, all right, wipe the slate clean. I think that's a good way to, good description of it, where that doesn't exist anymore, and that's not, you don't have to do that. It's not like it's not like that's a requirement of being a good person to forgive someone.
Yeah.
You can still be a good person and not forgive someone for something that was
definitely
too painful or too destructive. But I do think that there is it's interesting that you said it, because it's something that I've definitely thought about, tried to articulate, and you've articulated it in a great way, where I think that there is this overriding urge for people to be seen as a good person. And don't get me wrong, I've got it too. I'm very much somebody who hates to be seen as a bad person, or hates to be seen as untrustworthy, or hates to be seen as all of these things. But I definitely think that the idea that forgiveness is something that you do for yourself and not for the other person, I think is a false narrative. Because I'm not forgiving for myself. That's a gift to you. In my definition. Like, you've done me wrong, for example, and I'm saying, all right, cool. I know for whatever reason you've, and I also think that there has to be some acknowledgement from the other person in order to get my forgiveness.
Definitely.
So, but yeah, that's my soapbox moment. Anyway.